Welcome to the $1 Million Blueprint with Jim Pudetti, where we can talk about the honest truth about either starting a business or growing your business to the $1 million mark. I will give you a roadmap that provides you with the ideal client or buyer, financial wisdom, marketing, branding, leadership, and so much more. Thank you for joining the $1 Million Blueprint. I hope you enjoy the episode. Today, we are with my partner in crime, Mr. Jim Pudetti, my husband. Hi, Jim.
Hello.
Let's back up and just tell everyone a little bit about us. So both of us were married a little later in life. We weren't right in our early 20s. And when we both met, we were pretty established in our careers. We had our own portfolios. We were both pretty independent. And then we got married, and we decided that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but I always wanted to make my own money. So we decided that I was going to stay home and transfer my career from being in accounting and go into all my licenses in the beauty industry. So first of all, my background was more accounting. And tell me a little bit about your background.
My background was also accounting and finance.
Yeah, you were more finance. I was more accounting.
More accounting in the beginning, and then I got into more of the finance when I got my finance degree.
Yeah, that's true. And so then I remember being married, and we decided that we needed a joint checkbook. And that was the first time we were going to do anything kind of together, financially. And so we both decided, obviously, we'd have our names put on it and stuff like that. And then the checkbook arrived. And remember what happened after that? He's looking at me like, no. Remember, we both wanted to carry the checkbook? And I remember you saying, well, I pay the bills out the checkbook. And I'm like, but I always have the checkbook in my purse. And we're like, well, what are we going to do? And you finally just said, here, you keep that checkbook. And you got your own checkbook.
I do remember that.
And now checkbooks are really not even in existence anymore. So it was kind of like the start of it. I have to say our marriage and our business life were kind of like all in the same. They were very combined throughout the years. Wait, Jim, how many years have we been married? Dun, 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 dun.
Trick question. I always have to do the math. 27 years.
Okay, so this June is going to be what?
This June will be 27.
Very good. Good job. And so yeah, we've been married for almost 27 years. But if we go back to the very start of it, I worked out of the house. We were trying to have a child, and I wanted to be established. And you were in one of your finance jobs, working a lot as usual. And then once I had the baby and started to work again, we had a part of our house that was for my business, and we had a nanny come in. Nanny Sue, 27 years later, is still with us, doing stuff with us as part of our family. I would see clients at the house two and a half days a week. And Nanny Sue was there, and we continued, and then the business grew fairly quickly. Within like 2 years, we were like, this is crazy. And we both sat down and discussed how we needed to move this outside of our house because it was growing so big. And then we did an analysis basically of, what should we do? Should I go work for somebody? Should I go rent space? And basically it came down to that me being me could not work for somebody else. And I knew in my mind I always wanted my own thing. So I thought, okay. So we bought a spa, an existing spa. and we negotiated back and forth. We did our due diligence. Well, actually, I would go there and you would go through all the due diligence stuff, and I'd be looking through all the other stuff. Remember that? And you'd be like, "Are you being helpful?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm really learning about all this other stuff." And you'd be like, "Well, what does this number mean?" "I don't know. I'm over here. You're doing that." Remember that?
Yeah, I was looking at it from a finance accounting standpoint, and you were looking at it from the spa side.
Yeah.
So it was kind of, we both had different angles when we purchased it, but it worked out well because we needed both those parts to make a decision.
Yeah. So then we went, and I'm like, we have to do this together. Go and speak to their staff, because they didn't know that this business was up for sale. And we went down into the conference room, and I started talking to them. Do you remember that? They all stared at me like, "Who the hell is, who is she, and why is he here?" And you were all in your suit and stuff from work. They're thinking, "What is he going to audit us? What does he want?" And we were like, "Hi, we're the new owners. Welcome." And
Well, they did have a heads up. The previous owner, if I remember, went in and talked to him first.
no, she wanted to, but then she didn't. She wanted to talk to Susie, and then she didn't, because Susie went out and did an errand. So they're.
I thought she did,
No, I think she wanted to talk to them.
but she didn't.
Yeah, she didn't. So they were definitely blindsided. So at that point, shortly after, we knew that the business was not in good shape, but we had to turn that business around pretty quickly. And they had a staff of probably 8 to 10 at the time. So the first year, well, we needed to make a profit, but when we first started, they didn't even have, they weren't making a profit. And so now I have a staff staring at me like, "What are you going to do? What are you doing?" And of course, they're unsure of it. So within the first 4 months, we did a lot of different things. We had to put a lot of different policies and implement definitely a lot of new things, procedures, protocols. And I think within about 4 months, they could really see a difference of it being run more as a business than some part-time job. And by the end of that year, we were making a profit of $250,000 or so. And so we immediately were like, okay, this is in a good way, shape, or form. But as we grew, I mean, we just took over a small spot, and then I'm like, we definitely need to have a hair salon if we're going to grow. And at the same time, the space next door came about. And then I was like, "Jim, I want the space next door." And so you did your thing. You went and...
Yeah, it was worked out well. The timing was perfect. I think it was an insurance company was moving, changing locations, and it was about, I want to say 1,000 square feet, which was perfect for a hair salon.
Yeah, we wanted to
So-
start small.
We ended up remodeling it.
Yeah, we
knocking down-
remodeled it.
knocking down a few walls, and away we went with a hair salon also.
Yeah, I didn't do any remodeling. Jim did. I kept telling him what I wanted and where I wanted stuff. But yeah, so then we took on that space, and that space really transforms the little spot into now, a salon spa. And there was a lot of us in a much smaller space. And we quickly realized that we needed more space within a year or so, because that kind of went up really quick. And we had those people come right over, and they not took over a salon, but we had one manager, and some people followed her, and it was doing really well. And then a few years later, we're like, okay. And my dream right from the beginning was always to have a building, something we call our own, not pay rent. Didn't that sound great back then? To own a building?
It did, yeah.
Yeah.
That was, in this area, that's the only way to go, is to own your own building and not rent, because You're throwing money away,
Yeah.
basically.
And at the time, you had your real estate license, right?
I did. The timing again was perfect in that the other lease was just ending,
Yeah.
and we came across this building. I think we drove by it 2 or 3 times a day, and it was up for sale, and we were patient. And after the first offer we put in, about 2 years later, we ended up closing the deal.
How many times did we walk away or did the deal fall apart, though? Several? 3?
Twice.
Oh, twice? That's it?
Yeah, we walked away from a couple other deals.
Oh, okay.
But this one was twice. After the first negotiation, we walked away, and then about a year and a half later, it still wasn't sold.
Mm-hmm.
We made another offer, and here we are today.
How much money did we save by walking away and not being in a rush?
Probably about $250,000.
That's what I thought, yeah. So yeah, don't be in a rush. Definitely just let the process work and don't get over eager to it. What is meant to be definitely will be. So now we have at that time a 16,000 square foot building, 2 floors, which is now home to Luxon Spa and Laser Center. And then the lower half we rented out. So that was really good at the time. Then we were remodeling. But let's go back before we start talking about the new building. When we had the first spa and then spa salon, Taylor was like 2-3 years old.
Yeah, roughly.
Yeah, and it's funny because, like I said at the very beginning, our work life and our family life really intertwined. Do you remember Sundays at the spa, what our Sundays were like every Sunday?
Yeah, it was the 3 of us
Yep.
working at the spa. Well, 2 of us working at the spa, 1 playing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so every Sunday we would go and we would do whatever needed to be done. We did every room over. We did everything over. But that was our like family time, was always being at the spa. Even after you got out of work at night, we were go to the spa, do things. And I remember as we opened up with clients, Taylor, our oldest one, thought she was like the concierge or the person in charge of everything, because she would run over and talk to people and want to say hello, welcome. And I remember I'd have to like rush over there to go get her to make sure like she wasn't bothering clients and stuff. And actually the clients thankfully got a huge kick out of her, but Taylor thought that was her business, and these were all her friends. You remember that?
Yeah.
Remember at Christmas time, I think she got like 40 gifts or something from clients who just had seen her or met her or whatever. All these little things that clients had given her. She was instrumental in our progress there. But that was our thing. That was how we, spent our time, putting all our time and energy into that. And now we're fast forward to the new building. I remember we closed on it, and we were just starting to talk about renovations. And do you remember getting a phone call?
Yes.
Tell everyone about that phone call.
Well, we had been trying to adopt a child, and we were in the program for about 2 years. And I received a phone call, I think it was on a Monday, and it was from the agency. And we both had a lot going on. I was working full time, had a tax practice, and
We're doing our side hustle, Lux.
the side hustle of renovating the spa. And I think I also had my real estate license. So, to say the least, we were both very busy. So the agency called and said, "We'd like to sit down with you and your wife." And that's all she said. And I said, "Well, we're kind of busy. Can we call you back in about a week?" So Karen came home, and I think they called you right back.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
So then I was in a meeting, so I come back and my phone starts ringing again, and I answer it. And they say, "This is so-and-so. We'd love for you and your husband to come in and talk to us." And that they're calling from the agency. And I'm like, oh, okay. And they won't say what it's about, so you immediately get your hopes up high, but that's the only time they really call. And so I said, we will definitely be there. I just have to find someone to get Taylor off the bus. And they said, okay. So I found my neighbor to get Taylor off the bus. I called Jim and said, oh, we got a phone call from the agency. And he goes, oh, yeah, I talked to him. I told him we were really busy this week. I go, yeah, I heard about that. I said, no, we're not too busy. We have to be down there. You know, it's so-and-so time. And he's like, oh, okay. And I told him he was an idiot for telling him we were too busy. We laugh about it now. And then we went down there and they presented us with a scenario. And long story short, we adopted a baby. So they said, now this, we got there around 4 and this is like 6 o'clock now. And they're like, would you like to come pick her up tomorrow morning? But I had a hissy fit, very big hissy fit at one point. And all our baby stuff from Taylor, one of the girls who worked for me at the time was pregnant for her first. So I said, I have all this stuff. And the cherry crib, the high chair, the swing, the pack and play. I mean, everything under the sun. A couple years earlier, I had said, just come to my house. You're going to need a few trucks, and you can just take everything. Here you go. Good luck. So I said to her, well, you know, we have absolutely zero, nothing at all. And I said, considering it's now like later in the evening, can we pick her up the following day? And plus we have to go home and tell Taylor she's going to get a new baby sister. And so she said, sure. So we came home. We told Taylor she was going to get a sibling. And she said, I hope it's a girl. I'm like, oh, yes, it is. And so she was all excited. But then we had to go to Toys R Us, and that was another whole story, spending...
Babies R Us.
What did I say?
Toys R Us.
Oh, yeah, Babies R Us. Spending thousands and thousands of dollars, and, I mean, it was a whirlwind. So, of course, I didn't tell anybody anything, and then the very next morning after that, we went, and we picked up our new daughter. And she was, we got her on her birthday. She was a little over 5 pounds, and, like, the world, life changed. It kind of went upside down. And I remember saying to Jim, you know, one minute you're on a straightaway, you got all this going on, and you think, and then all of a sudden, you know, something comes up and it's totally different. I mean, obviously we are so excited and blessed. And I was like, how are we going to do all this? And Jim, being Jim, was always like, don't worry, it will all figure itself out. Don't worry. Jim doesn't worry about anything ever. And, yeah, but I remember for a while she would come with us to the building. And, you know, we'd have people working on the building. Jim was also kind of like the foreman, making sure who was doing what and everything. And I remember making signs on the walls where I wanted electrical plugs with chalk and stuff, holding this newborn baby, walking around and stuff. And it was like, oh my gosh. It was just a lot all at once, but it was pretty cool. So it was kind of like our older daughter started in the first place, and now we have our younger daughter, and she's part of the second place as well. But it was an amazing time in our life, and again, we were all back as a family doing things on Sundays and stuff. How do you think we work together?
I think we work together well. I mean, we have our differences, quite a bit actually, but I think we're both, we have strong work ethics, and we're both very goal-oriented, and I think that the fact that we're both very similar, I think that works well.
Yes, I would definitely agree. I think we're both alphas. We both, like you said, we have strong personalities, but we're both alphas in our own way, and I think we both like to be our own boss. And I know there's times I get really bossy, and then you get a little annoyed with me, and that's when I have to stop being such a pain in the ass, but it is. But I think we've always learned to kind of give and take.
I think one of the things that made it work out was you had this vision of how you wanted the spa, where you wanted the nail room and hair stations, things like that. And my expertise was in building
Yeah,
and remodeling.
yeah,
So that was a good compliment.
yeah. I definitely agree with that. Jim decided to move out at a very young age, and instead of going into an apartment or something, he bought an older house and gutted it and redid it. And what was the profit you made on this?
Well, I bought it. It was funny because I bought it when I was 20 years old. I moved out and bought it. It was a house in the city of Rochester. I paid $20,000 for it. And 3 days later, I was offered 30 for it because the people that I purchased it from were moving to Greece, the country,
Oh, wow.
and they decided not to move.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then I ended up selling it for about 70, maybe 7 or 8 years. Well, actually, I kept it and rented it,
Yeah.
and then sold it shortly after that.
But
But it worked out well.
yeah, and you made all that extra money and put all that into it and stuff. You really redid it. So, yeah. What do you think your biggest strengths are?
From a business standpoint, well, the accounting finance.
Yeah, definitely.
I would say one of my biggest strengths is everything that I look at as a common sense approach. Does it make sense? And if it does, then you go with it. And then the other thing is, and this comes probably from my corporate experience, is negotiating, which was very beneficial in dealing with all the contractors that we had to deal with when we were doing the remodel.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, you are always really good at negotiating. That is not my forte in any way, shape, or form at all. I mean, I just want to be able to say, do this, do it like this, and get it done. So, yeah. What do you think some of my biggest strengths are? Wonderful, pleasant.
I was afraid you were going to ask that. I would say, again, one of your biggest strengths is that you're very goal-oriented, and if you set your mind to something, you don't stop until you get it done.
That is true.
I mean, you will work 14, 16 hours a day, nonstop until you get it done. And that's important in business.
Yeah. Yes, definitely. So let me ask you, one of the things we talk about a lot is, our goals for our girls. We want to leave a legacy in everything we've done and stuff. Do you feel like we're doing that? I mean,
Absolutely. I think everything we do now in life is for our girls.
yeah,
I mean, at least from my point of view,
mine too.
everything I do, all the work, the things that I'm involved in now, it's all for the girls.
I agree. And I think that's just who we are as parents, or what, I mean, I didn't grow up a whole lot. You definitely did not grow up with a whole lot. So we learned very early on that if you want something, you're going to definitely have to work for it. And that's kind of how we brought up our girls, too. But like, I know we've talked about like, one of my biggest goals was always, and you agreed with it as well, is leaving a legacy for our girls. And that's one of the things that, I want them to know we worked hard to help them and give them a good start. So, let me ask you, do you think we've had any like hardships throughout this journey with us together?
We've had a few. There's never a dull moment. I think the first hardship was very early on when we purchased the building. I think it was within the first month of starting the remodel. I had walked down one of the stairs and noticed the floor was very shiny. Well, as I got closer to the bottom, I realized there was about 8 inches of water covering the entire basement, which may not seem like a lot, but the basement is approximately 5,000 square feet, and that was totally covered with water.
I do remember that. And you know what else I remember about that? It was a Friday when you discovered this, and it was my birthday, May 16th, my birthday. So yeah, I do remember that because I remember thinking it's 10 o'clock. You were still at the building. You had called whoever you call when you need to fix a flood. How much did that cost us again for that whole disaster?
It's about 8,000, because we had to pay a company that came and pumped it out, sprayed it, and then I had to take out all the drywall.
I remember that. You spent hours down there because you had to take out, and at the time, the basement level was all small offices with cubicles and drywall, so it was not just like one big room where you had to worry about the outsides. It was like a ton of stuff. I do remember that was crazy.
And the walls were insulated too.
Oh yeah.
So if you know anything about insulation and water, the water will rise right up like a wick, right to the top. So all the insulation had to be pulled, and I had to cut. I think I cut four feet of drywall
I remember that.
around the whole building and the inside walls, just to make sure that there was no water damage and no mold.
Yeah, that was a big thing.
And that was the first flood.
Oh yeah.
We had 2 more since then. Not as severe, but
Oh, yeah, and at that point, the lower level was kind of like, I don't want to say ruined. It wasn't ruined, but everything how it was when we first purchased it was totally destroyed and done. Yeah, and then the second one was July.
the second one was not as bad. That was actually a sewer backup.
Yeah, that was crazy.
So, yeah, that was crazy. That came from the break room
Yep.
to the sewer. And again, we had to rip out drywall. And the good thing is I was now experienced with floods. So I was able to go buy the equipment, humidifiers, and do it all myself. I knew what type of disinfectants to use.
Yes.
So that was a lot more work, but a lot less costly.
Yes, the one thing about Jim is if someone can do it, he can do it too, and he'll probably do it better. And anything ever, you know, whether it be painting, fixing, building. What are the 2 things you don't like to mess with? Electricity
I don't do electricity or plumbing.
and plumbing. A little electricity.
I do a little now and a little plumbing, actually, a lot more
Yeah.
since the prices are
Crazy.
Yeah.
So yes, yeah, those, and just think, you buy a brand new building, you know what your renovations are going to be because you've planned it all out, you've budgeted, you know what's it's going to take, and of course, even going through all that, you even said, whatever you plan on, add 1/3 more and 1/3 more time. I'm like, and I just wanted to hurry up and get everything done. So the renovations as a whole took about a year when it was all said and done from start to finish because we gutted everything. Like everything from the ceiling to the floor was gutted everywhere. I remember you calling me and your construction crew said, "We've run into a brick wall," and you all started laughing. Do you recall that?
Yeah, and it was an actual brick wall.
It was. The way our architect had designed the building, when you walk in, you're supposed to walk more forward, but they took down some drywall and there was actually a brick wall. And so I said, "Well, what do you mean a brick wall?" And they're just like, "Well, you really got to see it to explain it." And I'm like, "I'll be there in 10 minutes. And I remember going there and they all were like, "That's the brick wall." And I'm like, "Oh my God." So we had to go back to the architect and have that changed up. So that was a little crazy. And then I remember the heating and cooling system alone cost us $150,000. That was outrageous.
Not quite that much, but the one mistake we made was we ripped the old system out, and it was, I want to say March, April, and it was very cold that year, so it was too cold in the building, so it held up all the drywall because the mud wouldn't go on and it wouldn't set right
Oh, yeah.
because the building was too cold.
I don't
So,
really recall
Yeah,
that
the
well.
HVAC is always a problem.
Oh. So,
To this day, it's still a problem.
Yeah.
but we won't get into that.
Yeah, that's another whole podcast.
Yeah.
So yes, that is very, very, very true. Um, that's funny. So yeah, we've had a lot of funny, odd, crazy things happen here at times. I remember. What is one of your biggest stories that happened here,
The biggest story?
or thing, or whatever?
I'm trying to think. I really can't think of one. I mean, there's been a lot of little ones, but not
How about the break-in?
the break-in. Actually, I was going to mention that. Yeah, that's the. Yeah, but that didn't faze me. I mean,
Nothing phases Jim.
Well-
Nothing phases Jim in the least.
Well, I had already, when I owned the convenience store, I had break-ins.
Yeah, that's true.
So, I mean, a break-in to me was like, normal.
Well, it wasn't to me. They trashed my office.
Yeah, that's.
That I didn't appreciate that a whole
Yeah.
lot. But yeah, I mean, that was that. That was happened to be an inside job. But the weird, remember, we could see it on the.
On
We
the
have
video.
Yeah. We also have surveillance and videos and stuff like that. But that was one of the creepiest things, to watch someone sneak along the side of the building, all decked out in black. Everything was black. And see the knob move. See this person come in to my office. You don't see him in my office. And there was how many seconds was he in my office for?
I think it was 43.
Was it 43 or 23?
Had a 3 on it.
Yeah, I think it was
It
like
wasn't that long.
no, it was. I think it was why it was 23, because they knew exactly where they were going, and just enough to cause damage in there and grab stuff, money particularly, and leave. It was really, really eerie to watch that. But yeah, I'd say that was one of the crazy ones. Was watching that unfold and being able to see it and stuff. Yeah, but we've had a lot of things that have happened, and I think most people in business, of any sort of business, would, have to deal with a lot of these. Flood. How about the flood up here?
That was the third one.
Oh,
Because the flood up here, obviously, water,
Yeah.
rolls downhill.
Yeah.
So it went down to the basement.
Yeah, one of the pipes broke inside the nail room.
It was a hose.
A hose.
In the pedicure station.
Yeah, broke in the middle of the night and flooded everything. That was another fun time. So, yeah, I have to say, thank God you are calm, because I'm generally not calm. And I think that's helped out a lot, because I'll lose my mind and you stay calm, and then we all figure out what to do. So, yeah, but we've had, I mean, I don't know, I think the business with our family, with everything going on, stuff like that, it's, I think that's a huge part of our lives and stuff.
It's what makes life interesting,
Yeah,
really. I mean, we'd have a boring life if we didn't have
All this that we have.
businesses and kids and everything else going on.
Yeah, even like,
That's what makes life fun.
yeah, even like the book signing, we had a big party here in the building. That was a lot of fun. That was another party. I wrote a book, Rags to Riches, How Beauty Icons Made It Big, as you know. But that was another party. So, yeah, I don't know. I couldn't imagine not being on the journey we've been in. I could definitely not work an 8 to 5 job. Not a chance in hell. Because, I mean, I do work really, really, really hard, but I also never said, oh no, I can't go to this volleyball game, or I can't do this with this kids at school. So as much as, I work, it always gave us the family flexibility to do anything in as much as possible, really. So I think, honestly, it was everything I wanted and then some, having kids and raising kids during the journey, for sure. And if you worked for somebody else, you were the boss, so you got to do what you wanted anyway. So, and then when you were always doing your other things, It didn't matter. So yeah, I think if we could have set up our life and wrote out what would best suit us, I think we figured it out before it happened and made it happen, basically.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't think I would have changed anything. Maybe had a maid. I always wanted a maid and a cook.
That would save me a lot of work.
So I think that would have been the only things I would have changed. But no, I think we've done a good job juggling everything. Do you agree?
I agree.
Is there anything else you want to add to the end of this episode?
No,
No?
I think we've said it all for now.
Jim of many words. All right. Thank you very much for joining us today. We look forward for you listening to us again in a couple weeks.